death. It's got to be the final frontier. But is this where it all ends for us? In some lonely old graveyard somewhere? I think not.
Death. Life after death. Names we have for it. The afterlife. Heaven. Paradise. Valhalla. Tartarus. The Elysian Fields. The Summerlands. Every culture has this place we go when we go beyond into the next stage of life. Stage of life, you say? Well, it is. Death is the ceasing, but it's also the beginning. All things need to die in nature for others to be sustained. We see leaves fall and flowers die off. Material crumbles, mulches, deteriorates and becomes part of the soil. It finds new life.
The age-old question, is there life after death? We come into this world and then we leave. But what happens in between? This has been a question that has been asked for centuries. Do we come back? Do we not come back? Do we stay? Do we go? Is there reincarnation? Is there not? I myself use tarot cards as my form of insight, fortune telling and divination, along with angel cards. They seem to give me my link to finding out a little more about the insights that are coming for people. In my readings, I choose not to see death, for it's not my right to tell somebody that someone's going to die, that there's a death coming in the family, that there's something like that's going on. That's just not my right to do that sort of thing. In the deck of the tarot cards, I use the Mythic Tarot card, which comes from the Greek story of Jason and the Golden Fleece. There is the Death card. People so often see the Death card when I'm reading for them, and you automatically see them gasp, as if to say, the Death card. I don't see it as that way. I do read the Death card as the end of a particular phase in your life and the start of a new phase in your life. The card that is scarier to me than the Death card is the card of the Tower, because with the card of the Tower I do feel that there seems to be more of a ending, and it feels like it's more catastrophic and it is going to be harder and harder to deal with. So the Tower seems more of a scary card to me than the Death card would actually be.
This is what I've studied and I've understood. The universe is a sea of dynamic energy. It's a sea of infinite potential. And when there's a thought, this energy starts to come together and starts to form thought forms. And that's what the physical universe is. The physical universe is thought. It is energy that's been brought together to create that form. So, that's what I am. Now, I don't fully understand who or what I am. I know that I exist somewhere, but this physical body, it's not me, okay? It's just a vehicle. That's all it is. It's like a spaceship. I'm using this vehicle to explore this physical reality. And when I die, all that happens is that this energy just dissipates. You know, the consciousness that's holding this matter together just goes off, and the matter just returns to its normal form again, which is just energy. So, do I die? No. I never really existed in this reality.
But life after death for humans is very different. As we know, in some schools of thoughts, plain and simple, no, that's it. But I do put it to you that in my beliefs, I believe something does survive. Even if it's just an magnetic imprint or a memory in our conscious, we do have life after death. We live on in memories of people. We live on, especially those who've buried, or though the organic materials decompose and become part of the soil, which becomes part of the root system to a plant, new life. Even poets like Jim Morrison, better known as Aloisi-Wood, acknowledge this. A great creative being grants us one more hour to perform our arts and perfect our lives. We live, we die, and death not ends it. For me, I've seen that. And for some people, it will be like, yes, that's related to your grief. Now, how can you explain me seeing a glittering shadow, almost like you had white paint on a black velvet, walking through the house where I lived as a child near the cemetery, and it was in the likeness of my late grandfather, who I never met in this life. Now that's something too, Nirvana.
Is there reincarnation? And how does this work? And how many times do we have to do it for? Oh, that's a tricky one. So many religions have their own version of what's going to happen, what isn't going to happen to you in the afterlife. Some do believe in the reincarnation, some don't. I wear a cross around my neck. I was baptized and grew up Catholic, but over the recent 5, 6, 7 years, I have learnt that it's just wrong to close your eyes to every other religion and not see the possibilities of everything else. So who's to say that we don't come back over and over and over again? Who's to say that we actually leave at all? For example, this is just a thought I've put out there. Who's to say that we're not actually a dinosaur reincarnated? That the vegan vegetarians are one of the vegetarian dinosaurs? And that people that love eating meat and love their protein aren't reincarnated from a carnivore dinosaur? Who knows? I do feel that when we pass from this realm to another, that our energy does release. Our energy goes somewhere. How can it not?
Since the mid-1980s, I've been drawn towards the field of hypnosis, and the particular field of hypnosis that I'm particularly interested in is called hypnotic regression. And what hypnotic regression does is basically regresses you back into your thoughts. You go back and back and back and back, and you discover thoughts that you never had. And some of these thoughts are from previous lives. And what I've discovered by having many sessions is that, hey, I've lived before, and one life just continues from another. And you just basically you start up with finishing off the business left over from the previous life. And the cycle just continues over and over again. When the cycle ends, well, that's another topic of debate again. But by having all these sessions I've had over the years, I've just completely lost the fear of death. There's nothing to fear because life just continues.
Purgatory. There are some schools of thought where it is a place of waiting or a place of returning. It's more like life after death. It's more like you're standing waiting for your next bus to come. And for others, it could be like a place of eternal summer, where you'll never thirst, where you'll never hunger, and you can choose to return if you so choose to.
In my previous life, I lived in the 1800s, in Liverpool, in England. My name was Henry Bosch, that was my name. My father was also called Henry, and my father had a business. He manufactured ploughs, agricultural equipment. And in this life, it was a very sad life, where I felt as though I was controlled by my father. I really wanted to do other things, but I was stuck in this business of his. And when he died, I inherited this business, this agricultural business. Well, that was then. In this life that I've got now, I was born as Edward Gebert. Now, my father was called Edward as well. Again, we had a German surname. Also, my father also had an agricultural business. We're talking about the father in this life. I grew up in a country town and was never really interested in the business. And when it was time for me to come to Perth to do my university education, it was a great time to escape. And now there was this expectation of going back to this country town where I came from and take over the family business. But I chose to break the chain, and I decided to have my own life, and I never went back. So you can sort of see how my current life was just a continuation of this previous life of mine, where I just finished off the unfinished business, and it's uncanny how the same circumstances existed, between the two lives.
There are many people out there that think when you're dead, you're dead. That is just incomprehensible to myself. There is scientific proof that we have brain activity after we stop breathing for a certain amount of time. Now, when you want to speak of this in the terms of science, how can the energy, the electricity that runs our body just automatically go out? We're not a battery. It just doesn't go flat. It does, I feel, leave our body like you would get a short circuit and go bang, instantaneously. Our energy will leave our body. There are many people that have had life after death experiences. They can't all be lying. And yes, people will say that it's just the blood flowing away from the brain, and that it comes back to the brain and and that's what you remember. I don't think so. There has to be some explanation for all this. And for those who choose to believe there is nothing, for that is your right. Okay? For those who choose, and for myself, know that there is something, all the better, all the more to look forward to. I do know that we should all make the most of this life and the lessons that this life is now teaching us, and always try and do good by others and don't intentionally try and hurt anybody. Okay? Because yes, we are the master species of animals, the human race. Okay? And people choose to dress up, put makeup on and do yourself up. Ultimately, you choose to do that, just as you choose to believe what you want to actually believe in. We come in natural and we go out that way as well. So no amount of clothing, makeup, jewelry can ever get inside in here. So do your best to serve you right through in here. And if you do right to me, I'll do right to you. But in the bigger picture, in the universal scheme of things, I do feel that this will be recognized. So whether you come back or whether you don't, when you've learnt your lessons, I don't feel you do come back. I think that's when you do move on to the new higher level. So that's just my opinion. Unresearched, unread, that's just the way I feel. Though everyone has the right, the total right, and the right to be respected for their own opinion. That's the way I feel. So if you do believe, fantastic. You know that there's something else. If you choose not to believe, that's okay too. Just make the most of everything.
So for me, life after death, nothing's impossible in this universe. I'm just trying to prove it to be plausible. For me, it is such a personal thing that it's so hard to say, but for me, there should be a heaven. There is a life after death for us. Even in just the basic biological function of our decomposure, you know, even our ashes, when they hit the ground, it becomes part of the earth. There, a new life is formed from the old. So there is a life after death, be it more in the corporeal sense of decomposure and feeding the earth and becoming one with the earth, or that more abstract, esoteric idea of the soul living on. I sit somewhere in between both, that the corporeal will waste away and I will be there in the ethers, not as a single entity, but as an imprint on the universe, like a drop of water makes an imprint and becomes one with the ocean. Thanks for listening.